And Manchester United getting back on the score sheet again for the first time since the 6th of December and putting points on the board as well. Now, you know I love you, don't you?
Here we go.
I do. I love you. Yeah, I think you're a brilliant journalist. You're great at breaking news.
Thank you.
But you do get a little bit emotional sometimes. And I do have a habit of calling you out on the Premier League All Access podcast for being what is commonly known as a flip-flopper. You like to change your mind over a very short period of time. So it's a 1 week, a manager should be fired. The next week, he's the best thing since sliced bread. You change your mind very quickly, don't you? Is that fair?
Football's an ever-changing, ever-evolving game, isn't it? So life moves quickly in football.
Okay, so this was yesterday, just before half-time. From Alex Crook's Twitter. You have to credit Manchester United for continually finding new ways to get even worse. The goalkeeper is absolutely terrible. Who on earth sanctioned that deal? Next tweet. At 17-10, Aston Villa looking an absolute gift. Garnacho couldn't make a simple 10-yard pass to Rashford, who was in an offside position anyway. Honestly, this lot an embarrassment to the shirt. I stand by what I said in the first half. Second half has been unreal. Fans playing their part inside the ground. Need to see it through. Crikey was the final tweet.
That sums it up quite nicely.
Did you go on a bit of a journey yesterday?
I was an emotional wreck by the end of it. I think when the third goal went in, I pretty much slide tackled the front door. I missed the first United goal
front door
altogether because I actually wanted to turn the game off at half-time, and the family, because they enjoy seeing me suffer, they wouldn't let me do that. So I was sulking in the kitchen when Garnacho scored the first goal. But listen, the first half was dire. And we're asking the question in this section, is this a turning point or is Ten Hag still on thin ice? How many turning points are Manchester United going to have over the course of this season? I was at the Copenhagen game.
As many as you.
When Onana made that late penalty save, and you thought maybe that's the moment the season turns. No, they still crashed out of the Champions League. The Chelsea game, when they were dominant against Mauricio Pochettino's side, you think, well, maybe this is it. Then they get hammered at home by Bournemouth. I was at Liverpool with you, watching a really gritty display to get a point off the title chase, and you think, well, maybe this is the turning point. Then they get hammered at West Ham.
At least they showed a fight back, though, yesterday, because in the game against West Ham, one of the things that I think was really disappointing was that they went 2-0 down to West Ham, who were okay. They were good. They put a decent display. But actually, there was no sort of response from Manchester United, and there should have been after they went 2-0 down with 15 minutes to go. You would have expected something. They had that stirring yesterday, and I think it was inspired by the offside Garnacho goal. That sort of lifted the mood. He was quite sort of ebullient and full of life, and that revved up the crowd. And the atmosphere was good yesterday at Old Trafford. I was there, and it was a brilliant atmosphere, especially in the second half. I think they were right to boo in the first half because I didn't think they were very good at all. When I spoke to Erik ten Hag afterwards, he said, actually, no, the performance was good. We had a couple of good chances. The problem is that up until Garnacho took the game by the scruff of the neck, truly, they didn't look like they were going to score. They can create as many chances as they like, but when you've gone 4 games without scoring a goal, the confidence is low. Højlund at that point didn't seem to know his sort of coordinates. He was just not quite at the right pace. And then, or on the same wavelength with some of his teammates as well. Wasn't reading the play. Rashford and him had a little bit of a fallout. Garnacho and him had a little bit of a fallout. But slowly but surely, as they got back into the game and the goals started to flow, all of a sudden things started to go their way.
Well, the issue in that first half was the decision-making at the top end of the pitch was poor, hence that tweet about Rashford being in an offside position, which he didn't need to be, albeit Garnacho couldn't even find him with a pass anyway. The 2 goals they conceded were lamentable. Onana was dreadful for the first goal. The second goal,
but he kept you in it.
Doesn't pick up his man at the far post. Yes, he did, but to quote your mate Roy Keane, that's his job, to save the ball.
He made a brilliant save from Leon Bailey. If that goal goes in, then it is over.
Yeah, but that doesn't atone for all the mistakes that Onana has made. The jury is very much still out on him. I didn't like Bruno Fernandes' body language again. I didn't even really like Bruno Fernandes post-match stood there sort of strutting his stuff for the TV cameras, because in that first half, he was as poor as anybody. Yes, it was a great second half, but this is what this group of Manchester United players do. They turn up, they turn it on when they want to turn it on. Usually it's one game, and then they revert to type. Last night, it was one half of football. They need to produce a consistent level of performance. Otherwise, it's just going to be all these ebbs and flows over the course of the season, and Ten Hag will end up getting fired.
Do you fancy them against Nottingham Forest?
Not overly. Because you can't trust this group of Manchester United players. If they fancy it, they'll be too good for Nottingham Forest. But they haven't fancied it enough over the course of the season. So I'm not going to sit here and laud them because they've decided to turn up for one half of football. That's their job.
Yeah, but you've got to admit the second half was much better than the first.
Yeah.
And they looked a little bit more dynamic. They looked a little bit better organised. I quite like Kobe Mainoo in the middle of the park. I think he's adapted quite well. He made a mistake against West Ham United the other day, just a lack of concentration. But I think some of those younger boys, you think Garnacho, actually Kobe Mainoo, even Højlund, he's got something about him. His finish was good right at the very end to win the game. That was impressive. I like the lad Kwambala, who came on late yesterday and started against West Ham. Maybe one or two of these kids that are coming through now might give you a little bit more hope going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've been a big fan of Mainoo so far over the course of this season. You mentioned Garnacho. He does have that little bit of fight, but equally there are still games when he can go missing. So
he's 19.
He needs to find a level of consistency.
You have to be a bit patient with the youngsters.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's not the young players who've let Manchester United down this season. It's the senior players. And I think Bruno Fernandes, as captain, has got an awful lot of work to do to prove that he's worthy of the armband, because there's been many more histrionic performances from him than there have been good ones. So let's see if they can back it up against Nottingham Forest. Yes, the second half was fantastic. It was a great moment, but that's what they've become, a team that can produce moments, but as I say, not on a regular basis. They need to go on a run now where they're winning 5 or 6 games in a row to seriously challenge for that top 4 and try and salvage what has been a dreadful season. You had the statistic during commentary. They've lost more games before Christmas this season than at any point since 1930. One 45-minute performance against a knackered-looking Aston Villa side who actually were quite naive, I thought, in the second half, doesn't right all the wrongs that have gone before.
Is he right, Erik ten Hag, when he says, actually, all I need is the players back from injury and I'll have a very good balanced squad?
Maybe, but every team in the Premier League have suffered from injuries this season. Jurgen Klopp mentioned it to me after that 0-0 draw against United at Anfield. Newcastle, we're going to talk about them later, have had as many injury issues as anybody. Even Bournemouth, who I was watching yesterday, they've taken a while to get a lot of their players fully fit. I think the Winter World Cup has had an effect on the fitness of a lot of squads. When your Manchester United manager pointing to some absentees doesn't necessarily cut it. And the big question is, and we probably can't give a definitive answer, was that second half inspired by Ten Hag and what he said at half-time, or did the players actually just go out and decide to pull their socks up? They responded to the atmosphere from the crowd and managed to get over the line. I'd probably say it was the latter.
Well, the other question mark is about Aston Villa, actually, because Aston Villa have been on a brilliant run. They hadn't lost since Bonfire Night. They did end up losing that game. It was the first time, actually, they'd taken the lead, Aston Villa, in a game this season and not gone on to win. They had a 100% winning record prior to that match yesterday. And Unai Emery has made the fewest changes out of all of the managers in the Premier League to his starting 11s this season. I wonder whether or not there was just a little bit of fatigue once that atmosphere turned in at Old Trafford yesterday in the second half, and all of a sudden there was a bit of an onslaught from Manchester United. There was just one or two just looked a little bit tired, and I wonder if that is something they're going to have to address in the January transfer window. Maybe Villa fans want to talk to us about that. 03717 22 33 44.